I'm Naya, mom, boob nerd, board-certified lactation consultant, and lover of lipstick and curse words. I'm that weird Indian girl you knew in high school, all grown up.
And I'm Alexis, mom, birth nerd, and therapist plus doula, encouraging parents to hold joy plus what the fuck is this mess simultaneously. Some people think I'm too much, but those aren't my people.
And we are the Top Knot Squad.
TKS is a tiny little podcast about motherhood in real life, the good, the bad, the ugly AF.
Hosted by two women that are passionate about our beliefs and unafraid to speak our minds.
Friends that wanted to create space for all that ish we are too scared to talk about.
Are you ready to laugh, be vulnerable, and keep it real with us?
Top knots are not required.
If the Top Knot Squad content makes you laugh, nod in agreement, or makes you feel less alone, we'd love your support in the cost of producing this podcast. Visit patreon.com/topknotsquad to learn more about our budget-friendly sponsorship tiers and how you can help ensure that TKS has a future. Every little bit helps. On this episode of the Top Knot Squad, we revisit where the hell we've been for the last couple of months. Earlier this year, our squad grew by 2 feet. Alexis had a baby. Baby Rhys was born in late May, and he's been eating ever since. On today's episode, Alexis shares her experience with being pregnant, having a baby, and going through the 4th trimester during a global pandemic. This information is from her views and experiences, and yeah, she's privileged AF. I hope that was okay. I feel a little rusty after not doing this for so long.
It originally said 1st trimester, and I changed it to 3rd because I was,
and I meant 4th.
Yeah,
so.
That makes more sense.
Yeah. Like I said, a little rusty, trying to get back into the swing of things with this.
You're fine.
So for those of you who, I don't know, have somehow been avoiding news and current events for the last 7 months, Alexis and I are not recording. We're recording together, but we're not together. So we're distance recording using Zoom and some awesome microphones and equipment that our engineer helped us get our hands on. So hopefully everything sounds good. Hopefully we'll kind of get into the flow of things here. But yeah, what do you have to say, Alexis?
I remembered that we were recording tonight at 4 a.m. today. So things are a little crazy.
Yeah.
I know you're working a million hours.
I am. And then
both doing virtual school,
which is, I feel like that's a whole other episode all on its own, and trying to navigate that nonsense. It's a mess. It's a mess at our house. I feel like it's a mess at most people's house.
Yeah. Are y'all choosing, we have to make a decision by Friday, I think, if we want them to go in person for this next 9 weeks. Do y'all have to do the same thing, or?
So we actually had to do that last week, and they didn't say it was for the next 9 weeks. They just said moving forward. But we had, we had yikes. We had a Zoom call with our principal at the school, and she's like, just so you know, you can change your mind. If you decide this now, you can change it and it can be something else. So if you decide that you want to go in person now, you can always change your mind and switch back to virtual schooling or the other way around, telehealth. Yeah. You can also tell I have been working quite a bit lately. Never stopping, it seems like. But yeah, so we had to make that decision. We did choose to stay virtual just because we're not totally comfortable with the kids going back yet. And also our school, and I feel like AISD hasn't done the best with letting us know what it's going to really look like. Our principal did a pretty good job of explaining what it would look like, but it was still maybe a little bit too vague and a little bit too nebulous for our comfort zone. So we've decided to keep them home and continue this hellscape that is virtual learning. And I feel so bad saying that, but it's been challenging with younger kids for sure. And I know it is for you too.
Yeah, it's, I don't even have words for it. Our district has done something a little different where they've done this phased in approach. So we've been online for 6 weeks, I feel like, or it's been over a month. So maybe 5 or 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And so the next 9 weeks starts October 15th. So we're going to stay virtual. I'm still just too anxious. And I feel like our district also is doing a really good job of like telling us the numbers. Like they keep track of any positive cases and exposures and like have this whole system. It's been really low. Like it's been staying low, but they also only have 25% of students there right now, so.
Right.
So I'm just curious what it's going to look like because October 15th, that's the date that everybody can be there again. So I'm just curious what that's going to look like when that happens. That's the main big thing that's been happening for us is I had a baby and then I got to do virtual school and then I started a new job.
Yes.
So now I also...
Lots of changes in the last few months for you.
Yeah. I get to add working to what I'm doing. But we did hire a nanny. But she's only here 3 days. She's part-time, so she's only here 3 days a week. So 2 days a week, I still have to do virtual school. And today was one of those days. And that's why I look like this.
I don't think people can... No. Unless I post that screenshot, but I told you you'd get editorial rights before I did that. But yeah. I think it's just going to be audio.
Yeah, I look pretty rough.
Well, I mean, we're on days that I'm not working, we don't leave the house. And so that happened to be today. And so I washed my hair, didn't bother to do anything to it. So I'm not far off from where you are either. So definitely not looking my Instagram self. Not that I ever even look that glamorous, but let's talk about Rhys. Let's talk about your pregnancy and birth and whatever you're comfortable with sharing with our listeners. Do you want to kind of give an overview, or just dive right in?
Yeah, you can ask me questions as they pop up.
Sure.
But I guess what I thought would be most helpful to share is just what it was like to have to pivot and change everything, literally everything, being pregnant and having a birth during COVID. So, yeah, I don't even know where to start because, I mean, I actually was pregnant at the birth awards in September of 2019 and didn't know it.
That's a fun story.
I think we might have shared it on another episode. I can't remember.
I think so. Yeah, I think so too.
Basically, we got shit-faced and...
We celebrated.
Yeah.
We celebrated me winning Best IBCLC and then our podcast winning Best Local Parenting Resource. So the champagne was a-flowing.
Yeah.
The cheese was a-flaming. It was a good night.
Yes, there was flaming cheese. Well, turns out, so after that, I was like significantly hungover, and like 3 days, I was like, how do I still have a hangover 3 days later? And then I was like, maybe I'm not hungover. And I was right. And I was splitting cells instead. So Rhys was a part of our celebration. And I didn't know
We just didn't know it.
Yeah, I didn't know it. But the reason I started there is because it was a very strange experience being a birthing person that's also a professional in the birth field. So I obviously have a good bit of knowledge about pregnancy, birth, what our options are, and I have a lot of knowledge about postpartum. And so this was the first time, not that I wasn't informed before, but I've been the most informed I've ever been as a pregnant person this third time around because I had not had doula training yet. I hadn't gotten my specialized perinatal mental health training. Like all of that is different now. And so I was informed in a really different way. And so I agonized over choosing a care provider. Like this was pre-COVID. So before the world turned upside down, I already was like feeling really unsure about, is there someone that's a good fit for me? And are they going to be trauma informed? And are they going to meet my needs? And am I going to be listened to and heard and all of those things? And so that was like, it took me a while to find a provider, and I ended up at an OB-GYN practice here that it's OB-GYNs and midwives. What do you call that? A collaborative practice.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was the right choice, but it was not. They were not trauma informed. They were incredibly harmful. So I'm 36, which is like barely advanced maternal age.
Mm-hmm.
And so simply because of that, they were pushing all of these different interventions that were not evidence-based. Like even before I was having a baby, this was just in my prenatal appointments. And so one of those, like one in particular, the one that kind of like ended it for me and made me switch providers was they wanted to do a sonogram at every single visit. And those are really triggering for me. So I'm a sexual assault survivor. I'm pretty sure I've said that before on this.
Yeah, we talk about it a little bit in the episode where we talk about our birth stories before Rhys.
So I have that history, and there are certain things about pregnancy and birth and postpartum that bring up a lot of stuff for me. And ultrasounds, because they're just very invasive, they're very uncomfortable. That particular area, like I have this issue related to my sexual assault about my belly button, which sounds weird to people, but it reminds me of my sexual assault. And so I don't like my belly button to be touched. So whatever the case, I wanted to limit ultrasounds as much as I could. And they kept telling me that because I was advanced maternal age, like I had to get an ultrasound at every visit. And then we wanted to birth at their birth center. They have a birth center as a part of their practice. And they used that birth center as a compliance reward. So they, of course, they gave me the option when I would argue with them. They would give me the option of like, okay, well, you can decline this, but if you don't do this, then you can't birth at the birth center. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah. There was already tension just with like them continuing to recommend something that I was communicating. This is really harmful for me personally. And if like being trauma informed means looking at the whole picture. So whatever hooey evidence you're using to make people have all these ultrasounds because they're advanced maternal age. And they would use like scare tactics too. They would always bring up stillbirth. So that was like one of the risks and why they needed to be looking at the baby that frequently. But if you look at the evidence, like that risk is very, very low, So if you are trauma informed, then you're going to look at the whole person. And no matter what the evidence is, you're going to listen to what their needs are, what their unique story is, and you're going to meet them where they're at and let them be a part of their own care. It's their body, right? And so if someone wants to decline something like that, they should be able to do that and still receive good care. And that's not what was happening for me. So literally right before the world turned upside down, we had our last ultrasound and last appointment at that practice. And every single time that I would get one, I would tell the tech, I would say, I'm a sexual assault survivor. These are really triggering for me. If you can please like tell me everything you're doing as you're doing it. And if you can avoid my belly button, which is hard during an ultrasound, like it can't always happen, but as much as you can, like, let's just have a conversation as we move through this. It's going to help me be able to manage this without dissociating, really. So I said that to this tech, and the first thing she did after I said that to her is she squirted the gel in my belly button.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
So I'm pretty sure I did like have a freeze response because he was at that appointment, but we had our kids with us. So he was like very distracted. but like I didn't have words. Like I couldn't tell her like, what the fuck? Why are you doing that? Were you listening to me? Like no words were coming. And I remember I kept looking at Ben, like aching for him to make eye contact and like realize what was going on. So that ultrasound was pretty excruciating, and she was like all over my belly button the whole time, and I was just kind of frozen. And when we left, I was like, I can't go back there. So this was literally like 2 weeks before the world turned upside down. And so we ended up finding a home birth midwife, and we decided to switch to a home birth. And then after our first prenatal with her in our home, literally like the next week, everything shut down. So anyways, I just think that's relevant because like I was navigating that, and then COVID hit, and I like pretty much had a breakdown in that moment. Like I was not well. That was part of the reason why I decided to take maternity leave early. I wasn't supposed to take leave until May, but I took leave in April. I found a psychiatrist. I got on Zoloft. I re-entered therapy, and Ben had to like step up a lot those first few weeks because I was just like crying nonstop and like couldn't get out of bed. I was a mess. And even though we had switched to a home birth, like there were still restrictions being put in place from our home birth midwife. Like they cut our prenatal appointments like in half. So, you know, I had just met this person and like made this switch, and then I wasn't supposed to see her for like another 6 weeks. And I was like, how the hell am I supposed to get to know you if we're not and that's like a piece of home birth care is like you get all these appointments that are really long and very detailed, and they spend time like asking you questions to get to know you and like care about your emotional well-being. And it felt like I was seeking that, and then it just got ripped away. So that really sucked.
Yeah. And it's exactly what you said. Part of the midwifery model of care is kind of treating, and I'm no expert. This midwifery and birth is not my field of expertise, but I feel like with the midwifery model of care, they take a look at the birthing person as a whole and not just focus on baby's growth and, placenta development and just kind of the medical aspect of it. They take a look at everything as a whole. And just like you said, if you're not getting that emotional support, even if it is a very wanted pregnancy and a very wanted baby, you still have to wrap your mind around the fact that there's going to be another tiny human there. And so there's a lot of emotional support, I feel like, that goes into every pregnancy and every baby that's born, whether it's your first, your third, or your fifth, it doesn't matter. But yeah. Go ahead.
No, totally. So I will give my midwife credit that I think she recognized that was going on. I was really open with her about my mental state and how I wasn't doing well. And she ended up like doing a couple extra appointments for me. They, of course, look different. Like she would FaceTime us for like the talking portion, and then only come and do like the physical assessment for like the last 10 minutes. So that, there were just a lot of losses. And then, as you know, I'm pretty sure our last episode that we recorded was with Sarah Bonds, and I was talking about going to Ireland, and we couldn't decide if that was the right thing to do.
Right.
And so that was another loss. Like we were supposed to go to Ireland for our baby moon, and we didn't get to do that. We had to cancel that. It was just a lot all at once. And so I was grieving a lot. I was just grieving this experience that I had really planned for. Like we have a 6-year gap between our children for a reason, because birthing Rowan and parenting her has been really hard. And like I needed that time and space to heal my own shit that came up around that, and to really feel confident and prepared to enter motherhood again. So we had like strategically done that. Like we had waited that long so that we could loop in all this different types of support so that I could survive another pregnancy and birth, because they had historically been difficult for me because of my trauma history. And so then for us to have planned so well, and then it was just like, oh no, we're going to make this really impossible for you. It doesn't matter that you planned for 6 years.
Right. And it doesn't matter that you waited until you had all of this support lined up or knew how to even support accessible before embarking on this again. And this is something that I know you touched on in the birth story episode in season 2, where we both shared about our birth and postpartum journeys. And you very specifically said that it's going to be, you had said that you're very specifically waiting to get pregnant until you know that you have those support systems in place to be there for you after you, while you're pregnant, when you're having the baby, and after the baby as well. So to have all of that basically ripped away from you because of this pandemic and because of, like you said, the world just being completely upside down and no one knowing anything, you're grieving a lot. You're grieving the pregnancy that you thought you had, the postpartum that you thought you had, the birth that you had imagined, all of that. Yeah. Do you want to touch a little bit more about losses and things like that, if you feel up to it?
Yeah, no, I mean, it literally felt like, I know that every single new parent that has walked this journey right now during a pandemic has experienced something similar. Like it is not easy to be pregnant and give birth during a pandemic. So, yeah, I mean, even just small things like since I knew it was my last pregnancy, I had paid for a photographer to do like boudoir, what do you call those? Maternity pics?
Maternity, yeah.
I couldn't think of the word. And that I didn't get to do that. We also hired a birth photographer which we'll get to in a minute, but I didn't end up having a home birth. We had to transfer to the hospital, but because of COVID, she wasn't able to come to the hospital. So I have no images or film of the actual he's coming out of me, which was like really, that was probably more of what I wanted than what I do have. Like the pictures that I have are lovely from our home experience, but it's not what I envisioned. So I was grieving all of those things, which again, of course, like this was all, we invested a lot into this, right? Like that was a part of the 6-year thing, is we had to get to a financial spot where we could do all these things that I wanted to do. We could pay for support because we don't have family nearby. We also intentionally always talked about we wouldn't have another child until they were both in school.
Yeah, school.
I just rolled my eyes. That's why Naya was laughing. I just rolled my eyes. Yeah. Yeah. I was like, I can't do this till they're both in school, so that when I'm home with the baby on maternity leave, I can just be with a baby and like focus on the baby and focus on recovering. So, on the postpartum side, I've been grieving that. Like my postpartum has not looked like that at all. So I know that every parent, like big or small, there's lots of small losses involved, even just around expectations. Like that alone, like the loss of your wanted experience is enough to make you feel lots of big feelings.
That goes far beyond birth. So even with birthdays and anniversaries and any other celebration, or if you were starting a new job or had accepted an offer on a new job, but then COVID happened and your job was no longer needed. I mean, there's a lot of, I think the world is in just some collective state of grief right now with having to reconcile that this is what we're living. This is our lived experience.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, that's the biggest thing is, so for all the other folks out there that have had to navigate this, or you're pregnant right now, I feel so deeply for all the experiences, big and small, that are having to shift and change for you. And it's not fair and it sucks. And I think that deserves to be acknowledged and validated.
Yeah, agreed. Give it a name. Call it out. It sucks. It's okay to say it sucks.
Yeah.
Because it does suck.
Yeah. Anyways, I'm trying to be mindful of time. Like, do you want me to share a little bit about the actual birth or?
Yeah. Whatever you're comfortable with sharing.
So yeah, we had planned this home birth. I'm trying to think where to start. So my labor started, I lost my mucus plug pretty soon after that. That was like early, whatever day that was. And soon after that, I started having contractions. And they initially started out, they weren't very intense. They were pretty far apart. And then just over the course of the day, gradually started to pick up. And I eventually moved into an active labor pattern where I was having them pretty consistently, and they had gotten intense enough where I had to like really focus to move through the contractions. And so that was, I think that everybody started coming over around that time, which was sometime that evening. So early that morning, mucus plug, and then fast forward, however many hours, 8 or 9 hours. And then that evening, my doula came, the midwife came, the photographer came. So everybody came over, and I remember feeling really anxious about them coming over because historically, when I birth, it takes a long time. So I have both of my other labors and births started similarly, where I had, contractions started out slow and then they picked up to be pretty intense and close together. And then I just kind of stay there for a while. So I was really afraid of that happening again. And so I was afraid that they were coming too soon, and that was I going to be in that same pattern again? Like I was just having a lot of thoughts about that and was unsure about when they should come. I think my midwife was really anxious about me having a fast birth, which just makes me laugh because I've now learned that I don't ever get to have a fast birth.
As someone that had a very, very fast second time birth, I don't know. It was intense, but anyway, we'll talk about that later. Go ahead.
Well, when I say fast, like fast for me would have been like 12 hours. So
that's true. Never mind.
12 hours would have been quite speedy and welcomed. But because third time parents, there's like this idea that, third time around that you sneeze and they like fall out of you. I think that there was a lot of anxiety about that. And so my midwife like really wanted to come, but they definitely were there too early, it turns out. But they didn't really know that at the time because I didn't want to get checked. Like we had talked a lot prenatally about how cervical checks are really triggering for me and that we were going to limit those. And what we talked about actually was we were only going to do one cervical check. We were going to do like a baseline check just to see like where I was at. And then from there, they were going to use my labor cues and like what my body was doing and all of that stuff to like notice how I was progressing. But that's not what happened either. So basically, I didn't get checked for a while, so they were letting me do my thing, and it looked like I was in active labor and that things were progressing. Like that's what it looked like from their perspective. But my cervix didn't match that basically. So by the time she did check me the first time, I have no idea. I don't remember like where that was in the process of this. I can't remember how many hours this ended up being, but it was like 30 something hours. And at some point she did end up checking me and she told me that I was 7 centimeters. So that was like a huge win. Like I felt so much relief when I learned that because I had never made it that far in my previous births. Like previously I'd only gotten to like 2 or 3 centimeters. And so 7 centimeters was like, holy cow. And so once that happened, they let me we had a birthing tub set up in our living room, and they let me get in the tub, and I was laboring there for a while. But at that point, things like significantly slowed down. My contractions like really spaced out. They were in a funky pattern. So she ended up getting me out of the tub. And then we did like every trick under the sun to try to get me back in an active pattern. So they were giving me herbs, and Kim, my doula, was making me do all these different crazy positions. They think that he wasn't, well, my midwife said that she thinks he wasn't putting pressure on my cervix. So he was still really high. Yeah. So anyways, long story short, we did a bunch of that stuff, and eventually my midwife wanted to check me again. And it's all a little fuzzy, but I think she just was like, she didn't know what was going on, right? Like it wasn't looking the way that it should, essentially.
Right.
And he was fine the whole time. Like every time they would listen to his heartbeat, he was tolerating everything fine, and he was doing completely well. But she wanted to check me again, and when she went to check me that time, she couldn't like feel, like she couldn't decide what was going on. So my cervix was posterior, and she was having trouble reaching it. It was really painful, and I ended up telling her to stop. And so she wanted the other midwife. Like whenever you have a home birth, there's always 2 midwives there. So she wanted the other midwife to check me to see if she could feel something different. She checked me. That was excruciating. And she did not listen when I told her to stop. I think from her perspective, she like wanted to be able to gather the information so that they wouldn't have to do that again to me, because it was so excruciating. But I was telling her to stop, and she wasn't stopping. So that was really terrible. But she decided that I was actually 5 centimeters. So
wow.
That whole...
And to hear that after thinking you'd gone to 7.
Yeah.
Or you'd gotten to 7. Yeah.
Yeah, I was pretty devastated. It was rough. So at that point, I know that we slept like they wanted me to rest, and I like slept for a while. I don't remember all the details. It's fuzzy, but and then my water also broke somewhere in there. So I think that coupled with I was exhausted. I'm pretty sure I was probably dehydrated. My contractions just were not getting into a good pattern. So we started having the conversation about transferring to the hospital. And so that's what we did. And that was like, when we made that decision, like it was kind of chaos, like packing the bags and like my doula is like, I don't even know how to thank her for everything that she did for me, because she just like fucking did it. Like this whole time, like another reason why a home birth was beneficial for us is because we didn't really have childcare for our older children. And so when this happened, like I didn't even have the brain space to think like, what's going to happen to my other children? My doula just told me. She was like, I'm going to take Rory and Rowan, and they're going to stay with me. And I was like, oh,
yeah.
Okay. Like it was like, yeah. And so my children stayed at Kim's house for, I don't know how many nights that was, like 2 or 3 nights. That's like insane. I can't ever thank her enough for what she did. Cause like otherwise Ben would have had to come home, and I would have been alone at the hospital, because like that was the only other option. Which I know that's something that folks are having to navigate now. Like, not every hospital, I think here now you can have 2 support people.
Correct.
But when I was leading up to my birth, there was a time where it was only 1 support person. And then there's other, that varies by city and hospital. Like it's different depending on where you are and where you're birthing. And there were some hospitals there for a while that weren't even letting
Partners come in.
be there. Yeah. So literally people were showing up by themselves to give birth, which just blows my mind. So thankfully, when it was time for us to go, I was able to have Kim there. So Kim came, and then they also worked up some plan for childcare while Kim was at the hospital with us. Like Chelsea came and watched my kids for a while. My birth photographer watched my kids for a while. Then some other doula, I don't even remember who, like she just took care of it. And so all these people like watched our kids while I was birthing. And then after the birth, Kim took them. That's bananas.
It is. It is for people to just kind of rally and come together and make it happen without you having to worry about it, especially in the middle of this pandemic it's bananas.
Yeah, it's bananas. And I'm like forever like indebted to them. So the hospital portion sucked. I've actually been telling my birth story on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And I've gotten to the hospital portion and I can't finish telling it because it just sucked. Like it just was not good. The one piece that I'll share is that I had really bad luck, like which has been true for me in all of my births. Like I know that I probably shared that in the other birth stories, is I also have bad luck. So when we transferred to the hospital, the midwife that happened to be on call when we showed up was a midwife that caused me harm at that OB-GYN practice.
Oh, no.
And then we were there so long that by the time her shift was over and the shift change happened, the only provider that was available to birth my baby was a male OB-GYN. Yeah. And I don't do dudes. Like it's triggering for me.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just like at that point, like I was just like laughing at how absurd, like really this is what's happening. Like this.
I mean, honestly though, in a situation like that, what else can you do? Yeah.
I don't know.
I would have had the same reaction.
I mean, I was probably actually in a trauma response of like, there's nothing to do. I'm just giving up. But yeah, so that really sucked. I saw that somebody asked about a COVID test. I did have to get a swab to my brain done. I was negative for COVID. That sucked.
Did you have to wear a mask while you labored and pushed?
I would have if I was positive. So
okay.
So I had to wear a mask until the test results came back, and then I got to take it off since I was negative. So I definitely know lots of other folks that have had to wear a mask.
Yeah.
Because again, policies range from place to place. But anyways, he finally, once we got to the hospital, I got an epidural. And they started PIT, and he was not tolerating the PIT very well. So they pretty much the whole time they had to keep like going up and down with the PIT. They were moving me all over the place because he just really wasn't tolerating it.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time it was time to push, like I ended up getting to 9 centimeters at the hospital, but I just kind of hung out there for a long time, and I had a cervical lip. And I remember this one nurse came in and she was super intense. And she basically like told me like, your baby's not doing well. You need to like get him out right now, or we're going to have to talk about a cesarean. And so she was like, I would like to feel while you're pushing and like help move the cervix. So that's what she did, and she moved my cervix manually. And then I like very intensely was told like, get your baby out right now. And so
yeah,
I didn't push. It was maybe like, I don't remember, 5 or 6 pushes. It wasn't very long. And 9 pounds. How big was my baby? 9 pounds, 8 ounces. How big was he? I can't remember.
I think 9'8".
He came out. And they had to do a lot of stuff to him. Like they were putting the tube down and sucking him and gave him oxygen. Like he actually wasn't doing so great, but I eventually got to they put him to my chest and I breastfed, or we latched. So yeah, that's the gist of what that involves. None of the that is omitting a lot of the story, but like I said, I haven't like emotionally processed through all of that portion yet, and I'm just not there yet.
Yeah. And that's okay. Do you want to talk a little bit about postpartum and about how that's been going?
It was more losses, like my family hasn't met my baby. They still haven't. And they can, like, they could drive. They don't have to get on an airplane. They could drive, but my stepmom's an entrepreneur. She owns a spice and tea shop, and her doctor recommended that she quarantine for 2 weeks before she comes. And just because she's so much more exposed, because she's still working and running the store. And that's like impossible. Like she can't quarantine for 2 weeks and run her business. So yeah, I don't know. We haven't really figured that out, if or when or how they're coming. So that sucks. Ben's mom has come, but we didn't want her to come initially because we were anxious about that. Like, it's really like having a newborn after all of that is like, my anxiety has been very heightened, which it already was. I told you in pregnancy, I had like a breakdown. And then by the time I had him, like postpartum, I was very anxious about the baby's health. And I still am. Like I'm most scared about someone giving something to him, which maybe that's not, based off what we know, they're apparently not as impacted as adults, but still there's just stuff that we don't know. So,
and that information seems to literally change from week to week, and it's just, they just don't know enough about it.
Yeah. But we did end up like weighing the pros and cons because initially I like felt devastated. Like I felt so anxious about the baby's health that I was like, nobody can come to our house. Like nobody can help us. So that included family. And we had bought a package with our doulas that included postpartum support, which actually, thanks to you and Alicia, they threw me a lovely mother's blessing that also had to pivot and be virtual. But everyone that surrounded me for that and provided support for that, like a lot of people donated to our postpartum doula fund. So that was super appreciative and helpful. I just wanted to throw that out there. But initially I was like scared to even utilize that. But ultimately, like my mental health, the benefits to my mental health of having some support versus no support, like significantly outweighed any risk of COVID. So we ended up having postpartum doulas come. That probably lasted for like the first 2 to 3 weeks. So we had postpartum doula support. And then at that point, we agreed to let his mom come. And so she came for like, I don't actually remember. It was like a week or two. Maybe it was 2 weeks. And she mostly helped with the big kids so that I could focus on baby. But again, it was all just very different. And like everybody was home. Like, so even when Ben went back to work, like he was in the house and like the kids were in the house and they were navigating their own big feelings and losses of, we're not in school, we're not with our friends, this looks really different.
The whole summer is completely different. Yeah.
Yeah. And now there's this new baby just fucking up our family. So so my poor children, like, talk about that, like all the things that they had to navigate around all of these really big changes and transitions, which they're still in. Like my children are not well. Like they are definitely impacted by all of this. And I know that that's true for like all the children right now, no matter what you're doing. Like even the kids that have gone back to school, like school is not normal. Like it's not what it used to be, So
yeah. At our school, whenever when they do start in person. So we're also phasing in to go back to our conversation at the start of this. And I believe this coming Monday is when we start at 25%. And so that's when like the kindergartners can go back because they're starting with early learners and then moving up from there. But they were saying that for recess, the playground would be closed. And there would be designated space, and they'd like map out space on the blacktop around the playground. And that's wild to me. I mean, you can't even go play or go swing or anything like that. So yeah, you're absolutely right. There's so much that our kids are grieving and dealing with as well.
Yeah, I know at lunch at our school, like they have them sit on one side of the table, like so they're not facing each other. So they're just like in these rows all facing
We're not even having a cafeteria. Lunch is in the classrooms.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So yeah, and if you're buying a hot lunch or if your child buys a hot lunch, they'll bring the trays to the classroom. So it's not even the same. Yeah.
Yeah, we actually asked our kids like the other day if they like, do you want to go back to, like, we told them this is what school looks like right now. Like some kids are going back to school and this is what it looks like. And we told them all the things. And Rowan, like, the couple times that we've gone places where she's had to wear a mask, like it is a huge fight with her to put on a mask. She does not want to wear a mask. And so as soon as she heard that about school, she was like, nah, I don't want to go. I don't want to have to wear a mask.
And that's my biggest thing about the kids going back to school too, is like, what if, I mean, they're little, they're young. What if it's like, oh, well, Billy and I traded masks because I liked his Spider-Man mask better. And then you shut the whole school down because of something like that. So
no,
yeah,
totally.
I don't think it's an easy decision that parents are coming to, regardless of whatever they do decide. And just like you said, with your postpartum, you had to weigh the risk versus benefit. And, if it's a greater benefit for your mental health to have people in there to help out with the baby or with the older kids, then that definitely outweighs it. And I think that every family is doing that with trying to figure out this school thing with COVID going on.
And similarly, the benefit to my nipples significantly outweighed any risks of COVID for Naya to come fix my nipples. So
I tried. I do what I can.
So thank you. You are also on my support team.
Of course. That's what friends do, but that's also what lactation consultants who are your friends do. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. I know it wasn't easy to kind of rehash through some of those. And like you said, it's still things that you're working on, but hopefully somebody listening to this who's expecting a new baby within this dumpster fire of a year, or, with all of this COVID stuff going on, hopefully it gives them kind of a realistic idea of what to expect. And maybe they can make plans accordingly to get that support, however it looks, with their birth or even with their postpartum.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening, guys. We're glad to be back.
Woohoo!
If the Top Knot Squad's content makes you laugh, nod in agreement, or makes you feel less alone, we'd love your support in the cost of producing this podcast. Visit patreon.com/TopKnotSquad to learn more about our budget-friendly sponsorship tiers and how you can help ensure that TKS has a future. Every little bit helps.
If you like what you hear, then be sure to click the subscribe button in your podcast app. While you're there, leave us a review. You can find us on social media. Just search for Top Knot Squad. We welcome your feedback and love making new friends.